He was the quiet man next door. No criminal record, no suspicious behavior. No one ever heard a sound. But beneath his floorboards, police found a nightmare. What they uncovered in that house shocked an entire city and exposed one of the most chilling child predators in modern true crime history. This is the story of Darnell Jones, a man who hid unimaginable evil in plain sight. And what you're about to hear is truly unthinkable. Darnell Jones was the kind of man people barely noticed, and that's exactly how he survived for so long. He lived in a worn-out beige house tucked along a sleepy residential block in Gary, Indiana. It was the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew one another by name but didn't ask too many questions. It's a place where neighbors exchanged polite waves but never pried too deep. Darnell had moved into the neighborhood about 6 years earlier and slipped seamlessly into that rhythm. He didn't throw parties, didn't make noise, and never complained. He worked the graveyard shift at a packaging plant. He always kept his lawn neat, raked his leaves in the fall, and sometimes offered to help older residents bring their trash bins to the curb. No one thought much of him, and that was his greatest weapon. His house, though aged and a little weathered, was kept unusually clean. Decorations in the windows, no family pictures, just heavy blinds always pulled shut. He drove an old maroon sedan with one hubcap missing. It sat parked in the same spot every day, rarely moved except for commutes. Darnell wasn't married, no kids, no close family. He claimed his parents were dead and never spoke of siblings. Most people simply assumed he was a loner. Quiet types weren't rare around there. But behind that silence, Darnell was building something sinister. In the summer of 2017, a 10-year-old boy named Cody Freeman disappeared on a Sunday afternoon. It was a hot July day, and Cody had been riding his bike through the neighborhood, as he often did, making laps before dinner. He waved to a neighbor on the corner, then turned down the street where Darnell lived, and was never seen again. Panic set in quickly. Cody's family reported him missing within hours. Police canvassed the area, asked neighbors if they'd seen anything. Everyone cooperated. Doors were opened. Basements were checked. Darnell let them in with a calm face and soft voice. His house was spotless. No strange smells, no blood, no struggle. Nothing was out of place. The officers moved on, but something about Darnell's calmness stuck with one detective, a seasoned investigator named Holloway. He couldn't explain it, but he made a mental note of Darnell. The man didn't seem nervous. He didn't seem worried. He just seemed hollow. Still, there wasn't enough to justify further suspicion. The search for Cody expanded across the city. Flyers went up. Search dogs were brought in. Hundreds of volunteers combed the woods. Weeks passed. No clues, no sightings. The case turned cold. Months later, another boy went missing this time. A 12-year-old named Julian Baker. He had taken a shortcut home from school, cutting through backyards and alleys. He never made it to his front door. Again, the neighborhood was shaken. Another child just blocks away from the last, vanishing into thin air. This time, the public's fear became something deeper. The realization that there could be a predator hiding among them, and yet Darnell remained invisible. He went to work. He mowed his lawn. He bought groceries in silence. Even his posters with the boys' faces appeared on every pole. He kept his routine untouched, as if none of it mattered. But Detective Holloway hadn't forgotten about him. Detective Holloway couldn't sleep. The similarities between Cody and Julian's disappearances gnawed at him. The distance, the time of day, the lack of witnesses. It was too clean, too careful. He started looking into Darnell's background more thoroughly. The public records showed Darnell had no criminal history, no arrests, no mental health holds. He passed every background check. His employment record was steady, and he paid his bills on time. But something wasn't right. Holloway's digging took him out of Indiana and into Darnell's past life in Mississippi. Before moving to Gary, Darnell had spent 10 years living in a rural town outside Jackson. The records were thin, but Holloway found a local newspaper article from 2009, a small headline buried in the back pages. A child, 8-year-old Samuel Triggs, had vanished from a trailer park near where Darnell once lived. The boy had been playing outside and disappeared without a trace. The case went cold quickly. No suspects, no leads. But the proximity to Darnell's former address was too close for comfort. Holloway reached out to Mississippi authorities and requested the case files. The report noted that Samuel's last known location was just 2 lots down from Darnell's trailer. Back then, Darnell hadn't even been questioned. He was quiet, cooperative. His trailer was searched, but no evidence was found. It was the same pattern repeating itself, a pattern no one had connected until now. Holloway presented the new findings to his team and urged the department to obtain a search warrant for Darnell's home in Gary. Initially, the judge hesitated. The circumstantial links weren't enough. Darnell had no criminal record, no direct ties to the missing boys. But pressure from the community was building. News stations were running stories about a possible serial predator. Parents were pulling their kids from schools. Then, the unthinkable happened again. 9-year-old Eliza Grant went missing just a few days after Halloween. She had been trick-or-treating with her older brother and got separated for only a few minutes. She was last seen near the edge of the same street where both boys had last been spotted. Holloway knew it had to be Darnell. The similarities were too exact this time. The judge signed the warrant. It was time to search Darnell's house again, but this time with everything they had. The search team arrived just after dawn. Darnell was not home. Officers approached the beige house cautiously, their warrant in hand and their instincts on high alert. Entry was quiet. No alarms, no resistance. Interior was just as it had been the last time, immaculate, sterile, cold. The walls were bare. The living room had a single couch, a coffee table with no magazines, and a television that hadn't been turned on. A thin layer of dust covered the windowsills. The air inside felt heavy, as though the house itself was holding its breath. The officers moved from room to room, looking for anything that could tie Darnell to the 3 missing children. Upstairs, there was a small bedroom with an unmade bed, and across the hall an empty guest room. The kitchen cabinets were stocked with canned goods. The fridge held only milk, bread, and eggs, but nothing raised alarms until they reached the basement. The basement door groaned open. Staircase led down into a dim space, unfinished and cold. Concrete floors, exposed pipes, a workbench in one corner, but something was off. One officer noticed that the air was different here, thicker, heavier. There was a faint odor that couldn't be ignored, like something organic rotting behind the walls. Then they saw it. In the far corner of the basement, near the furnace, a single floorboard had a different hue, was newer, cleaner, more recently replaced. Officers pulled it up. Underneath was plastic sheeting. When they cut through, they uncovered a shallow pit filled with compacted dirt. A crime scene technician began digging and then froze. A human hand was visible beneath the earth. What followed next was the kind of horror that even seasoned detectives never forget. 3 small bodies were uncovered, each wrapped in black trash bags. They were buried inches from one another. The decomposition was in various stages. One body, Elisa's, was still fresh. She had been taken just days earlier. Cody and Julian were also found, identifiable only by dental records and personal belongings. Each had signs of restraint. Their wrists showed marks from zip ties. Toxicology would later confirm that they had been sedated before death. In the process of collecting evidence, a detective noticed an unusual pattern on the basement wall. A section of paneling didn't quite match. The rest, tapping on it, produced a hollow echo. When the panel was pried loose, it revealed a hidden door, a secret room Darnell had built himself. Inside that room was a scene of pure terror. The hidden room was barely 8 feet wide and 10 feet long, no windows. The walls were lined with foam and padded fabric, soundproofing material. In one corner sat a stained mattress, bare and lumpy. Above it, a mounted camera pointed downward, angled perfectly to record everything that happened below. There were heavy metal hooks on the wall, attached to thick leather straps, a metal bucket, a shelf with syringes, bottles of chloroform, duct tape, rope, gloves, everything arranged meticulously. On a small desk sat a box of videotapes, each labeled with a name and a date. The first tape was dated 2015, 2 years before Cody disappeared. There were more than a dozen. Some names didn't match any of the 3 children found beneath the floor. There were names no one recognized. Some tapes had no labels at all. Detectives watched the footage with dread. Each video showed a child locked in the room, frightened, crying. Some were gagged, others too drugged to scream. Darnell rarely appeared in frame, but his voice was audible, cold, clinical, emotionless. He recorded everything, documenting their fear, their final moments. It wasn't just murder, it was a ritual, a calculated act of domination and control. The videos revealed that he had held some children for days, others for weeks, but in the end, all were killed. There was no sign of remorse, only method. Authorities collected the tapes and began the painstaking task of identifying every victim. Local police departments in other states were contacted. Missing children databases were cross-checked. That's when the full scale of Darnell's crimes began to emerge in Mississippi. 3 cold cases from 2008 to 2010 matched the ages and appearances of children seen in the tapes. In Alabama, one boy reported missing in 2012 bore a striking resemblance to another victim. The FBI was brought in to expand the search. A special task force was formed. Forensic teams combed every inch of Darnell's house. Cadaver dogs were brought to the backyard, the garage, even the nearby woods, though only 3 bodies were found. Evidence suggested there were more victims, possibly more than a dozen. But without bodies, prosecutors could only speculate. What terrified investigators most was this: Darnell had been killing undetected for over a decade, and no one had noticed. He had no prior arrests, no history of mental illness, no reports of abuse. He had slipped through every crack in the system. The tapes were the only confession he left behind, and even then, he never spoke of motive. When police finally arrested Darnell Jones at his workplace, he showed no emotion, no resistance. He calmly placed his hands behind his back and stared straight ahead. Crowds gathered outside the police station, demanding answers. Parents clutched their children tightly, many breaking down in grief for the lives Darnell had stolen. At trial, the courtroom was packed every day. Rows of seats were filled with grieving families, journalists, and horrified residents who had once called him a neighbor. The evidence presented was overwhelming. The video footage, the autopsy reports, the contents of the hidden room. Forensic experts testified about how the soundproofing had made it impossible for anyone to hear screams. Engineers testified about the structure of the crawl space and how Darnell had reinforced it to keep the smell from seeping through the floors. He had planned every step. Every kill was premeditated. Psychologists described him as a classic psychopath, high-functioning, emotionally flat. He showed no remorse, no guilt. He didn't deny the charges, but he also didn't explain them. He simply existed, blank, unmoved. The prosecution called him a ghost with a heartbeat, a predator who used invisibility as his greatest weapon. Darnell's defense attempted to plead insanity, but it fell flat. The jury didn't need long to deliberate. He was found guilty on all counts: murder, kidnapping, abuse, possession of illicit recordings, and multiple counts of desecrating human remains. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 300 years. Even in his sentencing, Darnell remained stone-faced, unmoved by the impact of his crimes. In the months that followed, demolition crews tore down the beige house. Nothing was left but an empty lot and a plaque that read, "In memory of the lives taken too soon." But the neighborhood would never be the same. Families still grieve for the children never found. Investigators continue working to identify the unknown names on the tapes. And across the country, parents now glance twice at quiet neighbors and think of Darnell Jones. Because monsters don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes they live next door. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they help carry your groceries. And sometimes they bury children beneath their floors. Darnell Jones didn't look like a killer, but what he did was unthinkable.